Master Tran announces that he is expelling Mage Rude from their party. Mage Rude is surprised and asks what's going on. Tran shouts that he said he was expelling him and orders him to leave, adding that they no longer need Rude and asking if he doesn't understand that. Rudd asks why he's being sent away so suddenly. Sufi laughs and says Master Tran is cruel. May asks if Rudd is surprised, didn't expect to be sent away, and hasn't he realized anything yet. Shin explains that she was against it, but he really is useless and expresses pity for him. Tran laughs and asks if it sinks in now. He explains that it was a mutual decision. Rudd explains that 5 years have passed since Tran created the Golden Rose Squad, and that Tran took him from the orphanage. Rudd explains that since that day, he has served the squad and strived to be useful. He even believed he could be useful to the whole team. Tran asks if he really doesn't get it. He explains it's because Rude is useless. Tran chuckles and asks if Rude understands how things are going. Tran explains that he and Sufi mostly fight in the vanguard. Mei's magic is range support, and Shin protects them from the undead and occasionally heals them. Rude says he understands everything. He thinks he came up with this tactic. Tran asks what Rude is doing and explains that the vanguard is not allowed to fight or use offensive magic, while Rude is simply toiling away in the rear, practicing worthless auxiliary magic. Tran asks what to do about Rude's uselessness and what the point of his presence is. Rude explains that he's not very good at it, but without his help, it wouldn't be possible. Tran interrupts, calling Rude a damn idiot and saying he's a burden now. Tran shouts that anyone can carry luggage and show the way. Rude replies that that's not what he meant by help. He admits he's no expert in supporting magic, but someone has to fill that role. Rude says that the upcoming dungeons will require more strategy than ever, and they need someone to guide them from the rear. Tran laughs. Tran asks if Rude is confident, considering they're now S-rank. He asks what kind of strategic battles are they, saying they could easily take out an A-rank dungeon. Tran doubts Rude's effectiveness and says he can fight without any magic support. Mei says Master Tran is right, and there are also questions about her safety, but she has confidence in her commander. Shin says her god is protecting her. Rudd asks not to rush and not to get excited, and also informs that his auxiliary magic is now always active. Tran shouts that they don't need Rude, calling him a pathetic, parasitic bastard. He also announces that he's already found a replacement for Rude, and they have a contract to fight together starting the next dungeon attack. Tran says Puff is a specialist and will be a higher level than Rude. Rude thinks he's never heard of such a thing. Tran asks if Rude has finally realized he's not worthy of being in an S-rank unit. He says that useless people get fired, that's a given. Rude asks Tran to stop. Rude says he doesn't recall doing anything to make anyone hate him, and that even if he did, there must be a reason. Rudd says they'll need his magic, and he'll prove it in the next adventure, explaining he can do more than just help. He explains that he's learned various forms of magic for the party, and there's a lot of it he hasn't yet used. Rudd explains that Thran treated him like a slave, and he knows perfectly well he doesn't deserve to be with them. But this party is the only place Rudd has ever belonged. Rudd compares Thran, who gave him space, to light and the sun. Thran replies that he's said it all. Tran says Rude is a pain in the ass and suggests going to the restaurant where they have a reservation. Mei says she'll be taking over the team's tactics and will be even more successful at it. Shin calls Rude a poor thing and says he hopes he remembers their kindness for the rest of his life. Tran remembers and says that he cancelled Rude's adventurer registration. Rudd hopes Tran won't regret it. Tran laughs and says he definitely won't. Rudd says he's still grateful, but he cries. Rudd doesn't believe what's happening. Rudd asks the landlady not to say they've sold everything. The landlady greets him and welcomes him back. She asks if Rudd is in too much of a hurry. Rudd asks her again. The landlady asks if he's going on an adventure and says she'll miss him, as he was one of the few worthy adventurers in town. Rudd says he's going. Rudd asks if he can deactivate the bracelet. Rudd explains that it's the last remaining piece of magical equipment, never sold because he's always had it, and that it's a support tool that helped Tran and the rest of the squad. He says he remembers those days. Rude explains that when they were D-rank, they were attacked by a group of bandits at night, and he managed to locate them with his magic. allowing them to survive. He explains that since then, he has been constantly activating auxiliary magic to strengthen them. Rude explains that this magical item was created to assist with high-level magic. Rud shouts the release command. Rud lists the names of Sufi, Mei, Shin, and Tran and says that this time they are truly saying goodbye. Rud feels uneasy, explaining that it might be due to a magical imbalance in his body, and that it's been 5 years since he last felt that way. Rud is surprised by how light his body feels, how clear his thoughts are. He had no idea how much magic was flowing out of him, and how wonderful he feels. Rud asks if Tran and the others can really handle it without his help, and then orders himself to stop thinking about them, since he's no longer their partner. Rud says it's time to go. Rud says he didn't know the night sky was so beautiful, since all he did was study magic in his room. Now he thinks he won't have to do that anymore. He won't have to lock himself in a dark room, and he won't have to buy expensive magic books with his own money. Rud says he can use most techniques and doesn't need to travel with a team. Rud says that it is good and that it is exactly what he wanted. Rud says that from now on he will live the way he wants, go where he wants, buy and eat what he wants, will earn money doing what he wants and do what he likes, but first he will leave this city. Rud informs him that this is not Tran's decision, but his choice, and he will become an adventurer again. Restaurant, gifts of Minchery. Several people raise their mugs of the foamy drink and say they will shudder. Puff introduces herself and explains that she's a support mage joining the S-ranked squad Golden Rose. Puff says she can't believe they rented this restaurant just to welcome her and thanks them. She explains that as a support specialist, she's learned to recognize other people's combat abilities. Puff calls this aura. Puff is surprised by the S-rank group, saying she's never seen such an aura. She wonders if she'll be able to last long among people of such a high level and admits she's not sure she can handle these high-level people. Puff pushes away her fear. Tran says they'll be counting on Puff tomorrow, and she replies she'll do everything in her power. Tran warns her not to choke. Puff is surprised. Puff chuckles and looks surprised. She thinks their aura has disappeared. Puff reports that just a moment ago they had the aura of S-rank adventurers, but now they look like A-rank or even B-rank adventurers. Puff realizes they're just ordinary adventurers. She's surprised. Puff muses that no matter how much support magic they use, it's impossible to raise their abilities to S-rank. Furthermore, it's completely impossible to cast it on all 4 of them at once. Puff muses that he could wield such magic and comes to a conclusion. Puff says this is a man with divine powers. Rud says it's a good idea to travel alone at night using light magic, and says it's a good thing High Air was to the east, because it would have taken him about a month to reach the Empire. On this vast continent of Bajan, there are 3 main territories: the Demon Realm, the most dangerous place, the Roland Empire, the territory he's heading to, and the Kingdom of High Air, the territory where Rude lived. Rude reports that the true zones of human activity are High Air and the Empire, known as the Human Realms. A thunderous blade of wind in the form of a tornado. The bandit cries out in surprise. The bandits scream in pain. Rud says that even though it was only the first spell, it was quite powerful. Rud reports that this is the first time he's actually used some of the offensive magic he's read about. Someone asks if they're safe. Rud thinks there must be survivors somewhere. The prisoners are breathing heavily. Rud realizes they're slaves. He explains that it was a slaver's cart and that everything is fine now that he's dealt with all the bandits. The girl is breathing heavily. Rud says it doesn't look like all is well. He explains that the other slaves have already died, and she will bleed to death if nothing is done. He offers to help her and asks her to relax. Rud explains that he hasn't used restorative magic in a while and wants to see what can be done. Rud uses physical regeneration and the gift of clairvoyance. He reports that she's in utter trouble. Even her internal organs are damaged. Rud explains that these aren't fresh wounds. She's been a slave for a very long time and has contracted a lot of illnesses. Rud decides she needs to detox and restore her strength. Rud says the only thing at hand is the spilled water. He explains that they can clean it, steam it, and wash it all away. He also says that the clothes are in tatters and should be repaired with magic. Rud says it should work. The girl doesn't understand what happened and then exclaims in surprise. Rud realizes there's some kind of wolf. The girl asks what's wrong with her body and notices that not only has the wound healed, but her entire body has been restored. Rud says he hasn't used magic in a while and is tired, and isn't sure he's optimized his powers enough. The girl thanks him. Rud says everything is fine, he tried for himself too. Rud noticed a slave contract mark on her chest, something he'd never seen before. The girl screamed. Rud asks what's going on. The girl apologizes and explains that she thought he was going to hit her, that she's really scared, and asks him not to hit her. She promises to be a good girl, obey him and not try to run away. Rud explains that it's an injury. Rud explains that for her, a raised hand is a trigger. He says his magic can heal physical wounds, but not mental ones. Rud says that everything is fine and that he will not harm her. The girl asks if it's true there will be no more beatings, and Rud agrees and assures him everything is fine. The girl understands what warmth is and what it feels like. The girl says she's calmed down and regrets embarrassing Rud. Rud says everything's fine but wants to know what happened. The girl explains that they were suddenly attacked by a bunch of people, but doesn't know why. The girl says that they then saw them, said it wasn't what they were told, and started killing them. Rud talks about the information. He wonders if they had some kind of goal, and whether suddenly running into bandits isn't too strange. Sue thanks him again and asks his name. Rud replies. Sue tells him her name. Rud is pleased to meet him and suggests they move on. Rud explains that if they stay here, the bandits might come again. He thinks the wagon can be repurposed with restoration magic, so they'll borrow it. Rud says they can build a simple tomb with earth magic, and at the very least they need to bury those who were killed. Rud explains that if this is not done, they will be gnawed to death by wild dogs. Their fate is already terrible. Rud thinks they're running out of time, so a mass grave is the least he can do. Rud explains they don't have horses, but they can try to propel her with her magic instead, and he can use his tornado wind magic to make the wheel spin. Sue's attention snaps to attention. Sue asks Rud if he will be her master. Sue asks to be her master. Rud asks again, surprised. He asks if he's the master. Chapter 2. Sue asks Rud to be her master and to let her be near him. Rud exhales. Rud says a man can't refuse such a beautiful girl who looks at him like that. He reveals that he was initially treated like a slave and ended up in an orphanage as an abandoned child. Rud was later picked up by Tran. Rud revealed that his memories of his time at the orphanage had been erased, so he had no memory of where the orphanage was or what he did there. Rud says they probably wanted to make sure he couldn't escape from under the noses of the buyers, and no matter how difficult the place he found himself in was, there would be nowhere to run. Rud says the suffering hasn't gone away. He sends slavery to hell and says that such feelings never disappear without a trace. The girl apologizes and says he doesn't like her because she's weak, useless, and generally disgusting. Rud is surprised. Rud says it's not true. Sue asks if it was her. Sue asks where she got this outfit. She wonders if it suits her. Rud says it's very beautiful. He explains that if it weren't for the handcuffs on her hands, no one would think she was a slave and that she possesses some mysterious beauty. Rud notes that her shy and fidgety appearance is also charming. He wonders if he has a soft spot for beast-like girls. Rud says this is his first interaction with a beast-like girl and doesn't understand why he wants to protect her, even though he's never interacted with normal girls. Sue asks if Rud will be her master. Rud thinks it's difficult, but he has to refuse. He says he enjoys his freedom. Rud says he can't take responsibility for someone else's life right now and wants them both to live freely. Rud reflects that, besides, the Sue he knows now isn't anyone's slave and can live like an ordinary girl. Sue understands and says she will become her master's slave of her own free will. Rud says that's not what he meant. Sue says she's very happy to meet him. Rud agrees that he is the owner and will ask Sue to take care of him. Rud explains that the wagons can be used as tents and that it's good that they have a place to sleep. Rud suggests they eat first, asking if Sue prefers meat or fish. Sue says she's only had bread and milk, which Rud calls sad. Rud suggests they try both. Sue says she'll come and help, too, because she's a slave. Rud is perplexed that she thinks he'll be angry if she doesn't help. Rude says Sue can come with him, but he won't let her help. Rude thinks the shackles binding Sue's hands are a sign of slavery. Rudd explains that a slave contract cannot be terminated by a third party. Even if the slave trader died, Sue's slave contract was not terminated. They mean that Sue has already been sold. Usually this form of sale is common among the nobility. Rudd says that if they find out he broke it, it will be considered a crime. He explains that he has decided to live his life the way he wants and uses a contract-breaking spell. Rude says that the dark magic formula is trying to destroy him. Rudd explains that this is a very strong contract, which was most likely not imposed by a single person, but by a group of people, and no ordinary mage could break it except him. Rude reveals that he was a mage in an S-rank party and did everything from disarming traps to removing curses in every dungeon. He says he was plotting new routes for his friends and everything, so he's good at it. Rudd says he can take them off. Sue says it's incredible, and the merchant told her she'll never remove the shackles. Rudd tells her not to worry about it, and if she's going to help, she should be able to use her hands. Sue notes that he not only removed the shackles, but also healed all her illnesses and wounds. She explains that she was told they were incurable, like a curse, and even the priests gave up. Sue begs him to become her true master. Rude asks if she's serious. Rudd explains that they need to shackle the girl, exchange blood, mix magic, and carve a contract seal that will signify eternal subordination. He says he knows how to do it, but he doesn't want Sue to be a slave. Rudd says he can't do that. Then he says he'll do something else instead. Rudd explains that the beast men have their own culture, and a forehead kiss is a sign of friendship. He then asks what's wrong and says that such a relationship is much better than slavery. Rudd asks if she doesn't like it, and Sue replies that it's fine. Sue asks why she needs to be ranked so high. Rude asks again about the rank. Rudd says a friend is higher in rank than a slave, and Sue notes that he has an interesting way of thinking. Sue asks if he can do the same. Rudd agrees. Rudd asks what it is and if she's embarrassed. He says that even if it's part of the culture, kissing each other. Sue asks her master to take care of her. Rude thought he'd read a lot of books, but he still didn't know much about what was going on. Each race of beastmen has its own culture. For Sue's race, kisses between boys and girls have different meanings, while kisses on the forehead signifies discreet courtship. Similarly, kisses between girls and boys carry a reciprocal message. The message of Sue's kiss is, in the end, I'll give you everything. Sue thinks the master is being too forward and that it was her first kiss. Tran reports that this is the Ranga dungeon, the cursed lair of a ferocious dragon. Tran says he's had too much to drink. Sufi agrees, saying the magic is completely unresponsive and she's exhausted. Shin can't believe she's hungover from something so minor. Tran suspects they've been drugged and declares he'll smash the restaurant to smithereens as soon as he clears the dungeon. Tran explains they can't stand there forever and urges the boys to tackle the dungeon. Sufi and May agree, and Shin urges them to try harder. Tran asks what's wrong with Puff and if she's hungover too. Puff replies that she's fine and that it's something else. She suggests they not go today. Tran asks what Puff is talking about, and she says it's best not to go into the dungeon today. Tran asks what that means. Tran thinks Puff is like that brat he recently banished and asks her not to irritate him. Puff says she's an assistant and knows what she's talking about. She claims to see their power level and calls it an aura. Tran thinks it's like a battle prowess assessment, says it's great, and asks what it means. Puff says she's afraid they're not in top shape and, frankly, their battle prowess has dropped significantly. Puff says they're about B rank. Tran laughs and asks where Puff learned to joke like that. Sufi laughs and says she finds her overly serious face amusing. May explains that they couldn't have gotten so weak from a hangover. Shin agrees and says it looks like she failed to measure the aura. Puff replies that she understands this herself and that such a thing is usually impossible. Puff explains that yesterday, when she first saw everyone had an incredibly powerful aura, the kind she'd never seen in the guild before. Tran thinks that if there's a B rank among them, it's that useless bastard, since they're all S-ranked. Puff says that's not the case now, and if they take on that dungeon, there will definitely be casualties. Rude says that in his current state, he might not be able to fight at his usual level. He says that if Puff, the expert at helping assholes, says that, then he's in worse shape than ever. He says that they can't help but come in, and if they put it off until another day, everything will go to hell. Rudd informs them that they must do it today or they will miss the kingdom's deadline, and explains that this is not a simple request. The man explains that this is a test of their skills and that failure due to a hangover is unacceptable for S ranks, so they need to be prepared. The woman explains that they won't let their guard down. The girl says she's letting them do their duty. The man warns that this is beyond their level, and the woman asks the boys to. A woman screams as she strikes. A man declares a fireball spell. A girl explains a spell for turning into an undead. Rude says it's Tran's turn now and orders him to shut up, but Tran refuses to let him dictate. The man announces they were the best and announces a cross-punch. He says he is not going to stop until he destroys the enemy. Rudd explains that he can lift the cart with magic. The girl listens to him. The girl says he was kicked out. The girl asks why the master, who is so strong, considers the mind incomprehensible and where he learned to console. Rudd says he's not good enough, but the squad he was in was excellent. Ranks start at the lowest E and formally range all the way up to SSS. Until now, there was only one SSS ranked squad, the legendary heroes who had previously defeated the Demon Lord. To date, there are only 3 SS rank units, and even at S rank, only 7 parties have been certified. The woman says it's unfair. The man says there are at least that many of them in high air, and explains that it's a prestigious rank granted only to a select few. The girl says that Rude is great. She doesn't know anyone as strong, amazing, and kind as him, and it's unfair to say he's not good enough. It's they who are bad. Rude explains that he's an S rank, and everyone is much stronger than him, but this strange feeling makes him happy. He says that it is quite possible that they are now in an S rank dungeon. The girl says that now he has her and asks him not to think about them. Rudd thanks Sue and says nevertheless. He reports that it was a cart and says that he seems to have overdone it a bit. The man reports that they have arrived. Rude and the girl explain that they are in the city of Chensi, in the Roland Empire. He says he wants to be an adventurer again, but then, the girl asks if he wants to go traveling again, and he replies that he doesn't know if he can. The girl says she's sure he can and says he'll become the best adventurer. Rude asks May if she's sure this is the right way, and says it seems they've been here before. May explains that it must be the right way, but sighs. The man asks her not to say they're lost and says they must clear this dungeon today. The guy asks if it's possible to light the way a little. The woman explains that if she uses magic, then it's too much magic, and the man says that there's no point in dragging Master Tran along with him, he's an incompetent. Rudd says the girl should also contribute to the victory because she's too slow. The girl replies that she was just a little out of shape and asks if that's true, Master Tran. Master Tran says he wasn't in the best shape either and laughs. He says he's not sure he can do anything about it, but they have to try. The guy says he's sure this is the right road and suggests May hurry up and show them the way, and not waste time on roads full of monsters. The woman says they're having some kind of bad day and laughs. Puff reveals her name is Puff and that she was supposed to be the new S-rank squad's auxiliary mage. She explains that she sees a lack of coordination, role assignment, and a clear plan, and that it feels more like a rash, ruthless assault by a rookie squad. The woman announces that they are currently on the 4th level of 13, explains that the deeper you go into the dungeon, the more powerful the magic becomes and the higher the level of the monsters, and says she can't shake the uneasy feeling. The man shouts start, then announces that they are here, and shouts B. Rude says he doesn't need help and asks to see what an S-rank fight is like. The story explains that the main monsters that have appeared so far have been goblin zombies, which are at the lower end of B rank, and if a mage is S rank, they should be able to easily defeat them. The woman reports that the magic was quite powerful, but it's hard to believe it's her specialty, and her fireball bore no resemblance to the bone-crushing firepower she was credited with. She explains that her eyes weren't deceiving her, and the man asks how they got to S rank, but says that's not the most important thing right now. The man explains that if they don't retreat while the danger level is low, then we'll definitely. The woman says she'll be wiped off the face of the earth. The man says the same thing. The top right panel depicts a fountain. The middle right panel shows flowers. In the bottom right panel, a man explains that there's a market in this town where you can buy everything you need. In the large panel on the left, Rudd and a girl are walking down the street, with Rudd explaining that they'll soon get to their destination. He says that this is Roland's Adventurers Guild. Rude says the town and guild look almost like high air, which seems odd. The girl says she's welcome to Bunnyball, the Adventurers Guild. The man expresses surprise. The girl asks how she can help. He says he would like to register as a new adventurer. Anne says she will take care of the registration and explains that she is the guild secretary. Rudd says it's nice to meet you and invites the young lady to register with them. The girl replies that she's her master's slave and therefore doesn't need to register. A man says that such a little girl is a slave, another man says that she is a rare animal, a third man explains that she is small, and a fourth man says that he is jealous and thinks it is unfair. He says that it seems they have all got it all wrong. The girl says that only Rudd will be able to register, and he begins to worry about his future. She suggests preparing everything for registration and asks him to enter all the necessary information. Rudd says they need to tell you their name and age first, and that's nerve-wracking. The man asks the girl if she's lost and tells her that this is no place for such little ones. He says, "Ah," and the girl next to him remains silent. The man explains that he is a guy and apologizes for the confusion, as he is too skinny to be easily recognized. The man says that if you look closely, the guy is quite attractive and offers to find him a better job than this one. Rudd tells him to mind his own business and asks him to keep it down. The man explains that adventure is a real man's world, and there's no place for skinny, scrawny wimps like his interlocutor. He explains how annoying it is to see such a good-for-nothing bastard. He tells her to give it back, saying he's still writing. The girl says everything's fine. The man says adventurers must be strong and suggests the girl try to take something away. Rudd explains that adventurers are pretty much the same everywhere. The man says that wherever he goes, it's always the same and scolds someone. The man shouts, "Get it," and strikes. He explains that the opponent's physical strength, stance, and magical power flow are roughly at the B rank level. He offers one piece of advice: be more selective in choosing your opponent. The man expresses surprise. Rude stabs the man in the stomach. He says he might get kicked out, but he's still a former S-rank squad member. He explains that by using physical enhancement, he can deal especially powerful attacks. The man, drooling, says he can handle a B-rank opponent even without a squad. The man, shocked, asks. Rude reports that he quickly got back on his feet, and if it's due to his endurance, he's probably one of the best in B-rank. The man yells that Rude is trying to make fun of him. The man notices the shield and expresses surprise. The man with the bat stops abruptly and he expresses surprise. Rudd says that with this level of attacks, even if you throw punches all day, you probably won't get out, but he won't talk him out of it. The man screams at him, calling him a bastard, demands to be let out, and asks what he wants. Rudd asks him to be quiet for a bit and promises to let him go as soon as he's finished. He says it's just a bit noisy now, but at least he won't be bothered anymore. He asks Sue if she's scared, and Sue says she's not scared at all. Rudd reports silence. The man expresses surprise and amazement. The woman says that's not all, and that there were definitely 2 blows. The man says you should have seen it, the blow was right on the gallbladder, the guy is strong. The girl says it was a terribly fast blow. The guy says there's a strange group gathered here and asks her not to stare too hard. The girl says okay. The woman says the man has a keen eye and offers to compliment her further. The man says that's cool, senpai, and is surprised he didn't notice it before. Rudd says they need to take a closer look and asks who he is. The man says the blows were strong, 3 of them, and accompanied by physical force. The woman explains that the guy is interesting. The woman looks forward with surprise and tension. The man says that they were the best. The man sits with his head bowed, and a fire burns nearby. The man says that the devil. The chapter number is listed at the top right, Chapter 4. At the bottom right, a girl is reading a book while sitting under a tree. In the left background, a man and a boy are lying on the grass, and further to the left, a woman is standing. A few hours ago, in the cursed lair of the ferocious dragon, level 5. Rude says it's time for a short break. He doesn't want to rush and wants to check the map. The girl says she's tired and asks to replenish her magic power. The man suggests retreating if they continue like this. He says they're not halfway there yet and suggests they just keep their heads down. The woman says that's where the real work begins. Parf asks what Puff is talking about and says everything's fine. The man asks if he's being so naive and expresses bewilderment. The guy says that from now on he's lifting the ban on auxiliary magic and is counting on Rud. Rud says that. The boy says they need to keep an eye on them and expresses interest in how much the girl can help. The girl with long blonde hair starts to speak but stops. He explains that this is where the squad really shines and suggests working together as magicians. The girl with long blonde hair says that it's illegal. Rud says his help alone won't help matters, asking why he's so modest. Isn't he a high-level expert? He also wonders why so many people expect assistance from magic. The woman explains that for her, the bar is at the level of the heavenly tower, and asks for help with luggage, a map, and making arrangements. The girl says that perhaps these people don't know what auxiliary magic is and asks why they're trying to force her to carry luggage and navigate the route at the same time, explaining that she can't do both at the same time. She also says that she doesn't understand why so few mages use auxiliary magic and is perplexed. Rud says that you can use farsightedness and increase productivity with the help of strengthening magic in the auxiliary spectrum. He says that he is an attack specialist and asks for effort. He explains that up until now, magic has been conserved, so everything should be fine with lighting and auxiliary powers. The girl is surprised. He asks if he hasn't done much more than that, and asks if the girl can do it, explaining that he was the one who initially handled the maps and that lighting outside of combat is not part of a worker's duties. The girl says she can't do that much, and states that in adventures there is no such thing as working. The guy says they've talked about Rud several times and asks who this Rud is. Rud says it's time to move on and that they don't have time to rest. He reports that he was given a map, which he used, and all his luggage was given to him to ensure visibility. He uses illumination as well as a torch. He considers himself capable, but notes that few can expand their range of abilities, and it is incomprehensible to him how one can use all three attributes at once. OG. Rud suggests using levitation magic to levitate objects you can't carry. Rud says that these words make you want to cry. Rud explains that, on top of everything, their demands are too high, and she's already explained that she has her limits. The man says he did all this without complaining and asks if that is true. The girl says she doesn't understand who Rud is and asks how many different types of magic he's used, noting that they're all extremely difficult to use simultaneously. The man says he simply can't wrap his head around it and wonders who Rud really is, the savior of this. The woman explains that it is a curse that cannot be broken. She explains that it will grow and consume the body until it is completely destroyed. Rud reports that this is the 6th floor, and the magical power is clearly different from before. He explains that this is indeed a dungeon known as the Cursed Lair. Rud says that this is where the A-rank dungeon truly begins, and he's still not used to the tension he feels when entering the dangerous area. He says they don't need a map anymore and can focus on the battle, and suggests they keep their spirits up. The man says this is a straight road and suggests they follow it, turning to Puff. Puff expresses surprise. The girl says they're facing a huge Goblin King zombie. The man says it must be the floor boss. Rud says this might be their chance and luck is on their side. The girl asks if they'll really do it. He says it's not the boss and calls the man's line of thought amazing, noting that he's truly a genius in some ways. The man explains that since this is the cursed lair of a ferocious dragon, there's definitely a dragon here, which means the boss must be a dragon. Rud explains that the mid-game king-tier boss is the most dangerous A-rank boss, and in the worst case, even an S-rank would struggle to defeat. He reveals that they've forgotten the dungeon's name, even though the hierarchy was previously listed, and asks if they've even thought about it. The man announces that it's time to clear the dungeon. He confirms this and says that preparations for the extermination are complete, and the woman asks for treatment. The girl says that maybe they were testing her and that all her past foolish actions were just some kind of S-rank test, surprised that they came. Rude explains that the reason for her poor performance against the B rank was to see how she would perform, and explains what it means to join an S rank party while still being tested. Rude recalls the words of a senior adventurer in the guild, who says that adventurers need more than just combat skills. The woman says that she is an adventurer, a seeker of the unknown and a fighter against difficulties. She is not afraid of a superior opponent, because now, the woman reports that she is accompanied by S-rank comrades. The girl screams, calls the guys, and then says that everything happened in an instant and asks how this is possible. Rudd reports the bonds. Rudd explains that the wall of light will be easily destroyed, but at least they'll buy themselves some time. Rudd says they need to pull themselves together. The man thanks God that everyone is alive. The demon says that if he's a zombie, it means he's at odds with the light. The woman says she's the goddess of healing. He says he was caught off guard and how disgusting it is. The man explains their S rank and can handle it on their own. It's their duty. The man urges them to move forward together, and he agrees. Rude says the cursed beast is causing great pain and is surprised it survived his sword strike, stating she's never been so badly wounded. The man calls Puff for help. Puff says he's doing everything he can to help. The text explains that as soon as the battle began, he declares that he will finish the enemy and casts a spell that calls upon the ash in his blood to dance and scorch the earth, only to be reborn and become an incinerating inferno, creating a ball of hellfire. He then laughs and commands the enemy to perish in a flame of darkness. Rudd announces that he has no choice but to use his trump card. The man asks if it's holy water. The woman turns to Mother Azlet and asks for her blessing to grant them strength. Rudd screams and attacks. The woman calls the creature an unholy beast and orders it to take the hammer of God. He shouts the spell, Holy Light of Purification. Top right. Rudd screams goo and goo. He screams and calls for Gobu, and the little creatures also call for Gobu. He explains that now she understands that according to Tran, the previous mage was banished because he couldn't keep up with the squad's strength, but in fact, he left because they were too weak and too. A woman claims she needs help from an unknown source. The strategy report for the high difficulty, A-rank dungeon Cursed Lair of the Fierce Dragon states that the winning team consists of 5 members of the S-rank Golden Rose Hero Squad, with the highest level reached being level 6. The woman apologizes for the delay and says she just finished filling out the form. Rudd says he'll check it now and there's no problem, then explains he'd like to check on someone first and has isolated them because they were making too much noise, clarifying that they're a B-rank fighter. The woman explains that she is a former adventurer who lost her license and confirms that she understands he is from high air. He and the girl are amazed at the woman's strength, and he asks if she saw anything. The woman explains that she always smiles even when surprised. That's the policy of hell. The girl says she's already registered Rudd and is just joking to keep him calm. Rudd says the girl's sense of humor is much stronger than he thought and asks if Znan can joke too. The man explains that they'll begin testing, which includes an aptitude test and a computer test. The woman says that this is a spirit and that, although they could be dispensed with, these are still the rules. The man asks Rudd if he is good at magic. He says that he is a mage but also wields a sword. The man says so. The girl says it's clear. Rudd asks to come here. Rudd expresses surprise. He explains that they first test suitability, and that magicians are tested with the help of these crystals. Rudd asks if it's a magic crystal and explains that the intensity of light can be used to determine the amount of magical power. And this is a magical artifact that reacts to the magical power of those who touch it and emits different lights. The girl asks if anything is known about this, and Rudd. He explains that if Kristam proves that he has sufficient magical power and abilities, then he has passed the tests, and says that then he understands how it works. He says that up until this point, he didn't need to know about elemental abilities. He explains that there are some types of magic in. Rude explains that they just need to let the magic flow from the ace as it is, and says the crystal won't break, so there's no need to worry. The girl asks if that's true. The girl tells him that the great sage, considered the most powerful mage in the world, is the only person who can break this crystal. He says it would be amazing if they could break it, and he understands that this is encouraging, so he will give it his all since he doesn't have to hold back. He encourages them to move forward, and the girl with the ears agrees. The man creates a magic circle with his hand. Rudd says he thinks it's a gross exaggeration to say that only a great sage can defeat him. He explains that both heroes of the supercontinent era are considered mythical creatures and are key members of the exceptionally powerful, one-of-a-kind SSS-ranked unit Girder Dämmerung. Russ. He says that since he has such a level of durability, there is nothing to be afraid of. He offers to do this, and the girl asks. He puts his hand on the ball and says Rudd says he's not glowing, and the man asks what. He says he was curious about how he would react, so he channeled only a little magic, and reports that it seems he's not reacting as well as expected. He then asks if he doesn't have enough magic power, or if the amount of magic power he has is insufficient to become an adventurer. A woman and a girl scream in fear. A man makes a sound of horror as a plate of food breaks into pieces. In the upper right panel, a man and a girl approach a fountain, near which stand 3 girls in costumes with ears. In the middle right panel, a girl in glasses announces that the only person who can break the crystal with pure magical power is a great sage, and reassures that the crystal will not break. The bespectacled woman is surprised and asks why Rude's flawless appearance is crumbling before his eyes. Rude exclaims in response. The woman thanks Rude for the water and asks if he is a bearer of some special magic, noting that she has never seen anything like it before. Rude hands the woman over. The woman explains that when the great sage destroyed it in the past, it emitted an intense light similar to the sun, and rumor had it that the chronicler was blinded by it. Now they measure the crystals while covering their eyes with glasses. The woman explains that the color of the light determines suitability. Rudd explains that perhaps it's just the nature of his magic and there's nothing special about it. The girl says it's unfair. Rudd reacts with surprise. The girl says that the master is capable of using so many different types of magic, and it cannot be that he does not have the ability to use any of them, and this is simply impossible. The girl is certain that Rudd shattered the crystal and reports that the master possesses even greater magical power than the Great One. Rudd explains that he has studied magic from all over the world and believes it would be an exaggeration to say that he is more powerful than the Great Sage. He then says that he is confident in the number of magical tricks he can perform. The girl says that she at least knows he can use magic. She explains that, technically speaking, it's advanced magic. The girl explains that the crystal may not have worked properly because it's cracked, and that it reacts to even the weakest magic. The man says it's impossible for it not to glow at all, and the girl confirms that's understandable. The girl explains that she knows the man can use higher magic, and the woman says that if you think about it, you need to somehow express greatness. Rudd writes on the paper. The text states that the examinee is Rudd, the observer is Anan, the estimated magical power and the number of corresponding elements are equal to infinity. The girl with glasses explains that infinity is normal because there are no limits and nothing can be measured. The girl with ears says that infinity is cool and praises the owner for his excellent work, asking if it's good. He says that everything is fine because that's how he. The girl says she has no doubt about his abilities. The man says it's clear, and the girl quietly says anicaps. Rudd remains silent. He says that if they find any other magical objects that can measure the power of magic, then they will try to measure it again. The man says okay. Rudd reports that his measurement results were unclear and that the suitability test was passed. He informs that next there will be a test of abilities, which is the more practical side of magic. Rudd says he didn't expect such a reaction and feels like he's seen something like this before. He watches the girl's confident gaze, her expression betraying surprise despite her smile. Rudd asks if she's easy to break, and she confirms it and laughs. He says they're not that easy to break, and that's because they're made of genuine golden slime. The story explains that the golden slime is a rare, small monster with a threat level of A. It has a golden body, and, unusually for a slime monster, it's built for physical attacks. Instead, it is reported to have overwhelming resistance to magic, while simultaneously using powerful magical attacks. It is said to be a strange monster, rarely heard of due to its extreme rarity. The girl explains that golden targets made of golden slimes would be difficult to destroy even at S rank without special skill. Rude says that's understandable, meaning it's nearly impossible to destroy with a basic magic attack. The woman says the ball is absolutely indestructible and is confident the targets will avenge the magic crystal. The man says it's a golden ball. The woman explains it's a visual test to see if they can control their magic, and that it's okay if they can't break the ball. She explains. Rudd explains that if he simply wants to pass the exam, it will be easy. He just needs to focus a small amount of magic, and he understands that the test is about precision, not strength. The girl says they'll get high scores if they strive hard, but they won't be able to disrupt the test. Rudd says he can't. The girl is confident that nothing will break this time and says that she really is fine. He says that he feels like they just exchanged a few unflattering words and adds that he will believe her, although he can see that she is nervous. Rudd announces that this is a great chance to test his skills and that he won't hold back because it's time to do it, after which he shouts forward. The girl asks him to wait and calls him Mr. Rudd, expressing surprise. He says he wants to know what's going on and asks where the staff is. Rudd says he's not used to using magic and asks if he absolutely has to. He explains that it doesn't matter and says he'll just use his hands like he usually does. The girl is surprised and asks if he always does this. Rudd ponders what magic he should use and suggests perhaps something else. He says it's time to unleash the fire within him and explains that May's forte was the fireball, or perhaps the more accurate fire arrow would be more appropriate. Rudd says he hasn't really studied offensive magic until now, as he's only ever been interested in the kind that can be used to support a party. He has some knowledge of support spells, especially fire magic, but hasn't had the opportunity to use them. Rudd says it's time to change that. He explains that now it's necessary to channel the magical power, simultaneously adjusting it to the element of fire and modifying its form. He will change the composition of some techniques to focus on power, ignoring precision. He announces that the adjustment of techniques is complete and will then develop several techniques for compressing magic. The man explains. Rudd says it's a fire arrow and expresses confusion. The girl replies that it's Little Misha. The girl says it was basic magic, not advanced witch magic. He asks, and says it's a basic fire arrow, then laughs. The girl says congratulations. Rudd says she's smiling through her tears and compliments her on her excellent composure. Rudd apologizes. He says the blow was unexpectedly powerful, though he didn't expect it to be, and that it was completely overkill. The girl reports that, as expected from the owner, he is magnificent. The woman asks to come here and says she'll now share the final results of the registration test. She usually does this on the spot, but this time she received special instructions. She explains that, as requested, she brought a potential recruit with her. The girl reports that she has received an order from the king and will now carry out his will. She explains that she will act decisively and without hesitation to achieve her goal. Rudd says that's already interesting. The image also shows a smiling girl and a belt with two swords. He reports that there's something foreign about the sword, especially the sword itself. Savinia thanks him for passing the registration test and says she's the guildmaster here. The woman says he must be Rudd. The woman explains they need to talk about the test results first. Rudd says they're correct. The girl with the ears reveals she's Sue, Rudd's master slave. The man says Anan showed him the report. The guy says he's never seen results like this before, and he says he's never heard of anything like this either, and says Anan described them as immeasurable and unknown possibilities. Rudd says he wonders if she'll dismiss it as a vague term, and says it's even kind of exciting. The woman informs him that he passed and congratulates him. He's now a member of the guild. The girl with the ears says that the test was passed flawlessly and praises the owner for his excellent work. The girl with glasses congratulates Mr. Rudd, and he thanks her. Rudd feels a little out of place, but agrees to start at E rank. The woman says she knows he's good at what he does, but that's all she can do even with her power, and asks for forgiveness. The girl asks who he really is, Mr. Rudd, and clarifies not. He tells him not to dwell on his past, has high hopes for his interlocutor, and is looking forward to working together, but first. The man says that now that they're done, they can choose what to do, and there's a task board at the entrance to the guild. The guy says he understands. The woman says she'd like to test Rudd personally. Rud asks if this is a continuation of the test. The woman says it's just a special test. She says he passed it. He asks about the reward. The woman explains that the game requires a reward, and if he wins, she'll give him the reward. Rud reports that there is a brilliant A-rank group looking for a partner, and he can write a recommendation. The man explains that choosing a partner makes sense. He doesn't know anyone in Roland, and so he happily agrees. He says that it's good and that he will pass this test. Rud says what he's talking about. The man asks what the conditions are and says they shouldn't kill each other. He says to start, perhaps, in this room and asks Anan to take the child out. The girl says that she will observe the test and will not leave her master. The woman says they don't want her to get hurt, and adds, well. Rud shouts barrier and creates a protective field. He says he must admit, the girl's magic level is off the charts, but magic isn't the only way to survive as an adventurer. The girl offers an example and asks how about this. He notes that it's anti-magic protection. Rud reports that the barrier interferes with magic and suppresses spells, and is also known as a mage killer. The woman says she's adapting very quickly and feels it. He says something strange seems to be happening and thinks they have a winner. The woman says she's only a little while away and she'll come. He asks her to show him how she's adjusting to him. Rud says he can't let them come, and the woman makes an ah sound. Then the impact or collision effect is shown. The girl screams in surprise as an explosion of energy erupts around her. He says, damn it. Noticing what's happening, Rud says what the heck. The girl asks when. The man tells her from the very beginning. The woman explains she couldn't put them in danger. The woman says that after all this magic, it's hard to even breathe. He explains that he's used to using a lot of magic and asks if he understood correctly that he won because he managed to block the attack. The woman says she's completely defeated and never thought it was possible to break a mithril weapon. Rud says it was an accident and laughs. The woman laughs and says she really likes the guy, he's very funny. He reacts to this with surprise. He says the woman has lost her former enthusiasm, he would like it to always be like this, but that this. Rud says he doesn't understand what an adaptation fetish even means, and asks if it's a fetish for magic or adaptation. The girl explains that everyone in the guild is addicted to adaptation, just like their guild master, and that the guild is full of weirdos. The girl says she hasn't seen a good adaptation in a long time and calls it funny, and also suggests being more serious next time. He says no. Rud says he doesn't want anything to do with the demon sword. He says he's often heard about the demonic sword and explains that if an inexperienced person holds it in their hand, their consciousness will be enslaved by the sword's power, and the fact that she wields it without any problems proves that she has complete control over it. The girl says she thought she was in control. The woman reports that this time the test is truly complete and asks Anan to present Roland with a guild medal. The woman asks to accept Roland's adventurer certificate. Rud reports that he passed the adventurer registration test with rank E. The examiner was Anan. The estimated magic power, the number of corresponding elements and magical abilities are equal to infinity. The guild master notes that Rud has incredible abilities. The girl says she'll follow Rud anywhere, and the woman confirms this. He says he did the right thing, has become an adventurer again through his own efforts, and finally feels like a man in the true sense of the word, after which he explains that from now on his adventures begin. The woman informs him that the squad leader should be arriving any minute, and that she will give him an official recommendation and provide an opportunity to meet in person. Rud says he understands. He says he'll see if there's a job for him and start with an E-ranking one. Rud reports that there are a few simple tasks for him. He says that gathering medicinal herbs is all that can be obtained for now, and explains that more quests can be obtained by joining an A-ranked squad. The girl says that she understands that this is too easy, but for now she'll have to be patient. The woman says she is grateful just to have some food. The girl says she can't lose because she's a knight. Rud says questioningly. The woman says that he is right and he says you are. Rud says yes and remarks that he's too close. The girl says she knew it and explains that Rud has an unusual aura. Rud says it was obvious at first glance and adds that her armor is hard and cold. The girl screams, demanding to know who the other girl is, and calls her name. The man next to them remains silent. The guy says that this is Liliru, the leader of their A-rank squad, who is called Brave Borfong. Rude says it's an A-rank squad, the very one he wrote the recommendation for, and then explains that it might not be from her. The man says it's clear, they're all like that here. The girl says she thought the meeting was tomorrow, but couldn't wait and heard it all from Anan. She asks. The girl asks what about Rude's master, who is already tired. She says she's very worried. The girl informs him that the decision was made on behalf of their entire squad, and they, the Brave Boar's Tusk, will welcome Rude with open arms. The man apologizes. Rude informs Mei, a sorceress, and Shin, a saint, that his partner is a martial artist. Rude explains that there's a new squad and a new location for him, and asks if she came all this way just for that. Rude explains that Puff, who is said to have replaced him, is also. He says that this is definitely not where he belongs, and the man says ugh. The girl says she's scared and makes frightened sounds. Then a woman screams. Rude wakes up and says, "Huh!" The woman tells him this is the guild's common room. The girl with ears calls out to the owner, saying he's awake. The woman confirms that Rude is awake. The woman says she thought he reacted painfully to the word squad and orders him to stop. He says he thought she would be furious and that she looks so noble. Rudd asks if there's a reason for this. The man explains that it would be impolite for him to remain silent and is sure the other man has already heard. The girl explains that she is indeed an A-rank leader, not only in appearance but also in spirit. A boy claims he was an adventurer in high air. A girl screams that she can't believe he was kicked out. The guy demands to know who refused such a diamond, and the girl asks him to calm down. The woman with glasses says she's never seen a mage like Mr. Rude, explaining that high air has a strange evaluation system and that they won't be able to find a replacement. Rude says he doesn't understand either, or the group members do. He says that no one blames him and that they are rather angry at Tran and the others for driving him away. Rudd explains that he's tormented by being abandoned by friends he trusted, and that's why he feels bad when he hears about the squad. He calls it squad phobia. Rudd says he didn't think it was possible and doesn't understand it. He explains that he wanted to help Sue with her problems. The girl explains that she wants to pat Rudd on the head, and he says that he is not used to such attention. The girl says she doesn't know which one is the boss. The woman explains that she understands and will come back later. Rudd says let's talk about joining the squad next time, but the guy objects. He says that if they have an A-rank squad, they need more talented people than him, and there's no need to choose him who's not quite right in the head. The man touches Rude's forehead with his finger, and in the reflection of his eye, a man is seen looking at Rude. The girl says that she needs this particular person and asks not to use anything, but to be more confident in yourself, because he deserves an A rank or even more. Rudd says he'll have to take responsibility and notices the girl blush. The girl tells him he was the first one to splash her with mud and, besides, is going to invite him to their squad. Rudd explains that he was kicked out, but he was able to start over with a clean slate. He says he's decided to live the way he wants from now on. The girl says, "Eh." He says, "Ugh." This is reported to be the Kingdom of High Air, the capital of Tiru, the most prosperous metropolis in High Air and the headquarters of the Adventurers Guild. The king announces that the Golden Rose has been demoted to B rank. Rude says he doesn't understand what's going on. He says that they are S rank and doesn't understand why this happened. He asks to wait and explain why they are B rank. The man calls Rude a bastard and says that he is sitting in front of the king, after which he makes a sound of pain and curses his opponents, saying that he is S rank. The girl says she's home and the other girl apologizes for disturbing her. The girl tells him to wash his hands properly, and Rudd confirms this. The woman asks if Rudd is acting like a father. Rudd replies that he is, or something like that. The woman explains that there's even water here and that it's a moving castle. The carriage, which had undergone a series of magical transformations during its journey from high air, became a home away from home, a place to rest. Rudd says he hid it outside the city, but it was still very conspicuous. Rudd heard rumors about it were starting to circulate, and it could attract unwanted attention. Rudd says he might have over-fortified the walls against bandits and monsters and will try casting the mask's magic. The girl says that she used to live like a recluse and devoted all her time to studying magic, so meeting different people became like a breath of fresh air for her. He reports that, nevertheless, he met different people. Rudd asks Sue how she's doing, and Sue says this is today's catch and wishes him a pleasant meal. The armored girl remains silent. He explains that he feeds the animal wild boar meat, swordfish fillet, and the liquid from a woodworm. The girl asks what it is and what he feeds the animal, and then clarifies whether it's meat, fillet, or liquid. The girl says it's delicious. The woman asks if it's some kind of medicine. Rudd explains that they don't have anything like that in Roland. They're called supplements, but they're real food. Rudd explains that he thinks they're designed for effective muscle growth, and that he's always taken that for granted. He says that if you think about it, his partners didn't take it very well either. The man says it's terrible and asks for it to be served to him. Rudd explains that he made the supplement by extracting energy from boa constrictor meat using magic. The girl says she's never seen anything like it before and asks if it's really meat, if such a thing is possible. He explains that by harnessing the reaction between bioenergy and magic, one can effectively extract the necessary energy and compress it, eliminating the need to worry about meat spoiling, which is convenient for long periods of dungeon dormancy. He asks if the woman he's talking to finds it easy. The woman reports that she herself. The girl says they don't seem dangerous, then says okay. The man silently puts a berry in his mouth. The girl says it's delicious. She explains that she now understands that the dish is perfectly seasoned. Rudd asks if that's true. The woman says it's delicious and she's sure it's filling. The girl says chewing is also an important part of the meal. Rudd is surprised. The girl with the ears explains that Sue is apparently a beastman, and therefore it's better to feed her solid meat. The woman says it's not just about nutrition and taste, but also about strengthening her jaws. The girl eats and says, "Yum." Rudd says that doesn't sound very convincing. The girl and Rudd discuss that she's right, but the sound of a door opening is heard. The girl reports that she's starting to feel sleepy. Rudd says they'll go to bed early tonight. The girl says okay. The man asks if Rudd is definitely not her father. He tells her that after dinner he bathes her, talks about magic and puts her to bed, and that since they met, this has become his evening routine. He explains that she is tired after walking around the city and is still afraid of prying eyes. The girl invites her master to take a bath together. Rudd says he'll go for a swim. The woman asks Lily to make herself at home, and Lily agrees. The woman is surprised and asks if they're really going in there together, and Rudd expresses confusion. He says that a guy and a girl their age is a bad idea. The girl with the ears agrees and says yes. He starts saying what it means. The girl says that the two of them will undress there. Rudd says they always bathe together. The girl confirms, saying she enjoys it when her owner pets her, and it makes her very happy. The girl with the ears asks why they can't shower together. The woman explains that there are many reasons for this and it's simply wrong. He says no, and the girl with the bows insists they should do it separately. Rudd says, well then, the girl suggests that we all go together. The girl and he are talking together. He says it's a bad idea and denies something. The girl with the ears says that then they won't be alone. Rudd explains that, unlike Sue, who is still a child, Lulu is a beautiful maiden, and that this is very dangerous. He clarifies that he means she's as red as a tomato. Lulu says she doesn't mind and was just thinking about taking a bath too. He says the girl's face is crimson and if she doesn't want to, then there's no need to force yourself. The girl explains that she's not forcing her. It's all to win Rudd over. He asks, win him over? And the girl explains that Liliru came to his house, of course, to invite him. The girl says that then everyone will go together. The girl and Rudd say the word what? He says it's not a good idea. He thinks it was. Rudd says that sharing a bath is a good opportunity to connect and shouldn't be missed, then says he's thinking about it. Rudd explains that he, too, feels awkward being around her. She asks him what he thinks and if he's okay with it, then says it's okay. He says, let's take a bath together, and adds, well, well. The girl says that it seems she has no right to refuse. The bath is big enough for 3 people. Rud says that the girl asks not to look so closely at the young girl's body. The girl asks why she is so cute. He apologizes. The girl asks the gentleman if she can come in already, and Rud asks if he can come in. He says what a wonderful bath. The girl asks where the towel is. He explains that here it is. The girl with the ears says they're ready. The woman says they can come in. Rud looks at them and says he'll go too. The woman says several times, then shouts. The man says the word salt twice. The girl says sir. The man says that her sleeping face is proof that it is possible, and he wishes Sue had more people she could trust. Rud says she's just being very friendly, and the girl says she didn't do anything special. He says he hopes so. The man remains silent. Rud reports that a stranger saw the girl naked and apologizes. The girl says that now it's happened, and Rud explains that he didn't see anything. The girl explains that not only that, she got vomit in her face. He says that the woman he's talking to is very beautiful, but she's silent. The woman reports a sound of pain. The woman says she was deprived of her first opportunity, and now she doesn't know how to look others in the eye. Rud reports that the man was the first to refuse his invitation to join the squad, and the man explains that he never refused at all. He says he wants to be friends with Sue now and asks him why he's doing this. The girl says he'll have to take responsibility for it and promises to definitely invite him again. The man explains that Sue is very careful, as he's already said. The guy starts to speak but can't finish. Rud says he likes her very much. But the woman says she didn't come here to make friends with Sue. Lily says she always gets everything she wants. Rud says he doesn't know how today went and that it's just a little test, and asks if he'll take her hand. Rud says he's never been held before. He explains that if he rejects her outstretched hand, he'll deeply offend her. He reports that something unexpected happened. Rud tells them not to worry and explains that this isn't a call to join the squad, but rather a friendly gesture. Then they show two people holding hands. He says he doesn't feel any hostility and just feels warmth. Under the full moon, a girl lies next to Rud, holding hands. Rud looks at her in surprise and says he didn't expect to see her there. The girl explains that she wanted to be near him and couldn't sleep. He says that someday he will deserve the hand of a faithful companion. Rud says he can't sleep because he's afraid the girl will leave. The girl explains that she won't leave and will always be there. Rud says that then he'll be able to sleep peacefully. He reports the chapter number 10. Rud tells me the location is roughly here. He explains that this is his first job as an adventurer in Roland and that it's an E-rank quest to gather medicinal herbs. Rud explains that there's a forest in the area with a high concentration of magic, which is probably why the high-quality herbs grow in the surrounding meadows. He reveals that the forest is also inhabited by monsters. It is controlled by a guild, and only adventurers of rank C and above can enter it. He explains that since they are rank E, they decided to collect them in the meadows around the forest. Rud tells Sue it's not safe here and she can wait at home. Sue says she'll be there and wants to help them with the work as a slave. Rud explains that he thought so and that's why he asked her. He asks if the girl will help him collect herbs. The girl replies that of course she will help. Rud says that doesn't apply to Sue, since they're not in a squad. Rud explains that he subconsciously thinks the same thing, or because she calls herself a slave. The girl explains that her phobia is squads. The woman offers to explore an unexplored, high-difficulty dungeon. He can't say for sure and wonders if he simply considers her a friend. He explains that the exploration area is safe, but the dungeon is quite dangerous, and it would be safer if the woman were with him. The woman explains that Lily also has a new job, then says, Rud reports that Lily is working diligently on the team's mission, and he is working diligently on his own. Lily explains that they will first decide which herbs they will be looking for, and Rud confirms this. Lily explains that this time they are looking for an annual herb called Ivesen, giving an example. He says he'll look at a real plant to make the example more clear. He explains that the plant has pink buds at this time of year and asks her to look. He says that if Sue could see this, it would be easier for her to search. The woman reports smelling a slightly distinctive odor. Rud says she realized. The girl says she'll search for it. He says it's strange, but if Sue has adopted this trait, Her sense of smell could be 100 times stronger than that of an ordinary person. The girl in the distance says that there she is, and he's surprised that she's all ready. The girl relied only on the smell that she remembered, and Rudd reported that Sue found hard-to-reach herbs one after another. He reveals that Sue has a pouch with a simple space compression spell that can hold many herbs. He explains that Sue wants to gain experience, and they're using today's time to do so. He points out the buds, saying that small ones are more valuable in medicine than large ones, and the thicker the leaves. Rudd says they need to pick the best so as not to overdo it, and the girl agrees, saying she seems to understand what he means. Rudd reports that as he fed her information, she adapted more and more, and notes that it was nice to see her trying. He says that's enough for today and he'll go. He reports that he got too carried away. Rudd says he suddenly sensed magic from deep within the forest. He explains that he'd been on guard for monsters the entire time, but hadn't seen any. He says that they are not only strong but also dangerous. The man growls. The girl with the ears asks the owner. Rudd says that they are finished collecting herbs and orders them to stay next to him. The girl agrees. He says protective wall and creates a magical barrier that reflects the attack. The girl stands next to him. Rudd says it's a boar and it's huge, asking if it's a giant. Rudd explains it's dark demonic magic and adds that there's more. He reports that the danger level has increased to rank A, and that the guild hadn't warned about anything like this. He explains that the creature is zombified by a high concentration of cursed energy. The girl screams in horror as a huge dragon opens its mouth and spews a stream of fire towards them. Rudd says that everything is fine and that he will protect the girl. He says he'll shut up the noisy mouth first. He scared Sue. In the background, he and the girl stand silently before the creature. Rudd says he doesn't want to hear the screams and will free himself from the curse's pain in an instant. Rudd explains that this is merciful punishment for scaring Sue. Rudd assesses the situation. He explains that zombified monsters must have a source of the curse. He explains that the body must be separated from the head, and confirms that this time it's the head, where everything is sealed. He uses the wind blade technique. The man announces the need to prevent the curse from disintegrating and slows down time. Rudd casts a curse removal spell, then casts a freezing spell. He says he has about 2 seconds and says okay. He then explains that he'll now use magnetism to gather everything together. The large image shows the sealing of the curse. Rudd explains that he cast a makeshift seal to prevent the spell from disintegrating, and that it will be enough for the time being. He reports that the source of the curse is much further away from the forest, and fortunately the damage to the forest is minimal. He tells Sue that everything is okay, and Sue tells him that it is over. The girl thanks Rudd for his help in collecting medicinal herbs. Rudd says he will report the incident to the guild and should thank her as well. The girl thanks Rudd for his protection. Something strange is definitely happening in the forest. The woman thanks Rudd for his work and greets him. He informs her that the herb harvest is complete, and the girl adds that he finished quickly, just as she thought. The collected herbs are lying on the table. The woman explains that if the quality is good, there won't be any problems, and she thinks the girl did a great job. The woman says it's a dimensional bag for storing items and that the owner has a rare magical item, and the girl says the owner made it for her. The woman in the suit with ears laughs and calls the bag cute, and another woman in glasses is surprised that the owner made the storage item himself. The man with the eye patch says it's perverted to treat a little girl like that, and adds that they look cute together just like perverts. The man with the ponytail asks her not to look at them and expresses disgust. The girl says she can always tell her if she wants to. Rudd says the herb gathering quest is successfully completed. The woman says she'll pay the reward now, and Rudd says he understands. Rudd says he'd like to talk about something. The woman asks if Savinia is here. The woman says they need to make an appointment in advance, but since it's them, everything's fine. He tells Anan there shouldn't have been a meeting today and turns to her. The man apologizes. The woman informs him that appointments are by appointment only. She explains that she's not particularly busy and asks what happened. Rudd says he encountered a strange monster while gathering herbs and came to report it. The man apologizes for the interruption and asks what's wrong. The woman says, The guy asks what kind of monster. The guy explains it was a wild boar of the A rank, zombified by a curse. He asks for more details. The woman clarifies with a curse. The guy says it was a madden monster cursed by gigantism. The woman says clearly. The woman says that Ivodinochka defeated him, and yes, even an A ranker. Rudd explains that although he said he was an A ranker, he just assumed that because he was a rather weak opponent. He says that if the girl decided so, he'll believe it, but ordinary adventurers, even with their rank, won't be able to handle it. The girl tells Anan to stop accepting quests in this area, especially low-ranking ones, to which Anan replies that she understands. He asks how the girl would act in this situation. The guy explains. Rudd says the guy is really something and asks how he is inferior to the pros. He states that he hasn't actually met any experts in sealing magic, so he has nothing to compare it to, and he doubts that it's possible to reach a high level by studying magic only from books. The woman explains that creating artifacts to store items is no easy task, and given Rudd's past, he's unlikely to want to attract unnecessary attention. She notes that even being so close, she doesn't feel any curse, calling the barrier perfect. Rudd says he'll be more careful. He says that indeed, it seems that he has been transformed by the curse, but his characteristics match those of the wild boars that live in that forest. The woman explains that the question is where the curse came from, and reports that traces of the curse were left at the scene. Rudd says he'll conduct an investigation at the guild. The woman offers to let her know if he needs help, adding that she'll submit an official request later, but the girl needs to rest and he says that's for sure. The woman announces that she's offering a special reward for this case and asks him not to refuse. Rudd thanks her and says there's no need. The man explains that the situation could have gotten worse, so the thanks are from him personally, and says that's fine. The woman thanks Rudd. He says that she is glad that he came to this guild and explains that his magic, or whatever it is, contains something divine in it. Rudd says the woman is exaggerating. The woman says he's completely unaware of it. She explains it's strange. The woman asks if he should dump the head on Anan, then says it will add to the workload. The next day, they report receiving a large sum of money and heading to a bookstore. He reports that a high-quality bonus has been added to the reward for collecting herbs, and a special reward for defeating a zombie boss has been included, giving him a considerable amount of money. He says it seems like the days when he was penniless are so long ago. The girl asks. Identification calculations have been added to spatial compression, making it easy to manage money. Rudd informs her that this is the girl's share and asks her to keep it in her bag. The girl is surprised and says it's the money her master received. Rudd explains that it's the herbs she was collecting. He tells Sue that he only received them in her place, so she can spend them however she wants. Sue explains that she doesn't know what she wants right now. The girl with horns says that if she can be with the master, she is already happy. A man on the street calls Sue by name. Rudd suggests they look for what the girl wants today. The girl is surprised, but then happily agrees. The girl asks if the owner is here. He confirms and says it's a bookstore he noticed when he passed by earlier. He shows the girl an ice cream, she tries it, then they eat the ice cream together. He explains that he bought the ice cream, and the girl is surprised. Rudd says he was thinking about buying a book on magic today and found Zambaka. He explains that Zambaka is an introduction to universal magic theory, understandable even by zombies by a quacken, and says the book is a bit abstruse, but an excellent introduction to the theory of witchcraft. He explains that he gave the rest of his books to his former comrades, and of all the books he read, this one was his favorite and especially easy to understand. He also says that this is the only kind of book sold in the bookstore, as expected from Roland. The man explains that there are actually only two parts, the introduction and the continuation. Rudd reports that, having combined it with the introductory material, he independently changed and refined it, and this became his current theory of magic, and a quacken is like a magic teacher for him. He says that if they were from the same generation, he would definitely like to meet him and wonder what he would say. But it's a pipe dream because the book is over 1,000 years old. The girl says that Sue has also recently become interested in magic and is sure that she will soon be able to read the introductory part. Rudd says it would look cute to read with glasses. The girl asks the owner. Rudd tells her the book is quite skillfully done. Most of the introductory parts are copies, but it might be the original. The girl is surprised that Sue looks good with glasses, and Rudd thinks she looks quite intelligent and he says and asks if that was the description. Rudd explains that the notes added supplement the original descriptions, and this is the unique interpretation of whoever made the copy, and this is not an error in the theory. Rudd invites Sue inside. Rudd notices that it's a bit dark and asks if anyone is here. He says this isn't a bookstore. He explains that there's a magical force present that he didn't sense outside, and reveals that there's a magic circle carved into the wall, a high-level formula for blocking and concealing magical force. It is reported that there are even magical tools, and that this is not just a bookstore. Rudd asks if anyone is there. Then a strange sound is heard, and someone starts moving under a pile of boards, causing Rudd to become surprised. He says he doesn't understand what's going on. A man in a cloak moves up the stairs. The girl follows Rudd. The woman sighs and asks what's going on, if there are guests. Rudd explains that he wants the book and asks if the woman is the owner of the store. The woman replies that she is and allows him to take the book. Rudd confirms and begins to take the book. On the right, a man says ouch and oi as he falls over, along with his books. On the left, a girl asks about payment, and the man says there's no need because the book was just lying around. The woman reports that this is no ordinary child. Rudd says it's an interesting magical force and makes a thinking sound. He says ho ho. He explains that the light of magical power is evaluating him. He wonders how he built up such magical power and notices that it is distorted. Rudd explains that he's not trying to master magic, but simply learned it from various books. The girl asks if that means the books were his teacher. Rudd says it's funny. He says boy, and the girl says that this girl is clearly younger than him. Rudd reports that Sue is still on guard, and the girl has realized that this creature is beyond her reach. Rudd explains that he senses no magical power from the girl standing before him. He explains that whatever magic is, it exists, and even in swords and armor, magic is always present. He is confident in his ability to see magical power, but even his eyes see nothing. He reports that the eyes of an ordinary mage are not capable of seeing the magic of this creature, only high-level ones. Rudd says it's not a copy and denies it,